Hello everyone, I'm Abonnez Jonathan. You're welcome to this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television, live from my headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital. Dwelling our top stories in this edition of the news, the national president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party, Professor Maurice KAMTO, accused of terrorism and violence, among other charges leveled against him. This information was revealed by the defense lawyers of Professor Maurice KAMTO in a press conference. He was arrested and detained in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, alongside other leaders of the CRM party and militants after last weekend's protests in some major towns of the country, notably in Douala, Yaoundé, and Bafoussam. And the president of the Progressive Movement political party, Honorable Jean-Jacques Ekindi, is calling for the liberation of Professor Maurice KAMTO if he is not found guilty of the charges leveled against him. Those were our top stories. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of the news on Equinoxe Television. The national president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party, Professor Maurice KAMTO, who came second in the October 7, 2018 presidential election, has been charged with terrorism, violence, and other charges. He was arrested and detained alongside other leaders of that party and some militants after the last week's strike action in some towns of the country as they went protesting against electoral hold-up, the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon, what is described as the illegal exploitation of resources of the country by a clique of individuals. This information on the charges leveled against Professor Maurice KAMTO was revealed by lawyers of the legal mind at a press conference in Yaoundé. Smanjikan Gebre has more.
The general condition of those who were arrested as a result of the peaceful protest march last January 26, 2018, allegations by the government that the Cameroon Renaissance Movement incited destruction of Cameroonian embassies abroad and the support those arrested will benefit were some of the major aspects which characterize the more than 1 hour press conference organized by officials of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement on Wednesday. According to Barrister Sylvain Swap, Maurice KAMTO, who was auditioned at the Special Operational Unit GSO in Yaoundé on Wednesday, was very calm and serene. During the auditioning, Maurice KAMTO is reported to have taken responsibility for organizing the peaceful protest march organized last weekend, but denied allegation that he incited people abroad to destroy embassies of the country. KAMTO added they were not militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. Maurice KAMTO was levied the following charges: terrorism, sedition, insurrection, inciting violence, and disruption of public peace. Barrister Sylvain Swap, however, lashed out at the government for the fact that charges were already levied on Professor KAMTO even before final investigations were done. The CRM political party's medical doctor, Abonnez, who was also part of the press conference, used the opportunity to say that most of those detained are suffering from trauma, citing the case of a 57-year-old woman who is suffering from abdominal pains but has been denied of medical attention, and also a young man whom, according to him, was caught and taken to the military barrack where he was brutalized and now suffering from a facial disorder. The young man, he says, needs an urgent scanning, owing that he is also suffering from internal bleeding. The vice president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Barrister Emmanuel Sim, who also took part in the press conference, talked about the numerous violations of human rights during and after the protests, citing cases of the use of tear gas to disperse unarmed civilians, use of scratching water after the said protesters had already been arrested, the fact that others wounded by live bullets were dragged out of the hospital, and also those arrested, particularly at the KMER in Swam, have been sleeping on bare ground. About the support to be given to those arrested, the National Treasurer of Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Thierry Okala Ebode, promised that everyone arrested will be taken care of, whether a supporter of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement or not. The Cameroon Renaissance Movement spokesperson Olivier Nissak was, however, shocked that the government, via the Minister of Communication, denied that no live bullets were used during the day of the peaceful protests. A total of 200 demonstrators were arrested as a result of the manifestation over the weekend. 77 of them are found at the GSO in Yaoundé, 68 of them in the KMER at Swam. The Central Police Station in Yaoundé is having 15 of them, and the State Defense Secretariat is having a total of 40 of those who were arrested from Chang, Mbuda, Bafoussam, Douala and Yaoundé.
And the persons arrested notably at the residence of the advisor of the CRM political party, Albert Zongang, in the Douala 5 subdivision are still being detained in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé. Among them are 2 journalists of Le Jour newspaper who are currently in detention. They were arrested in the course of the confrontations between some militant supporters and sympathizers of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement and security and forces of law and order at Albert Zongang's residence. And today we visited the office of Le Jour newspaper here in the economic capital Douala, and the seats of David Eyenge and of course the other journalist Theodore Chupa, who were arrested by the forces of law and order and taken to Yaoundé, were simply empty. Their seats were empty at the regional office of Le Jour newspaper. They are still being detained, and the Cameroon Trade Union of Journalists has condemned with strong terms the violation of rights of journalists in the Republic of Cameroon. Many journalists are in detention today, more than 20 who were arrested in the course of the discharge of their duties, and the Cameroon Trade Union of Journalists is decrying the violation of the right to expression and of course the freedom of the press by forces of law and order, and of course the government of the Republic of Cameroon. And the national president of the Progressive Movement political party, Jean-Jacques Ekindi, says there is no reason to keep Maurice KAMTO and the other leaders of the CRM political party in detention as of now. According to Honorable Jean-Jacques Ekindi, those who are in detention, Professor Maurice KAMTO and his followers, should be set free while investigations go on. And of course, if they are not found guilty of the charges leveled against them, they should be granted their freedom. They should regain their freedom as soon as possible, according to Honorable Jean-Jacques Ekindi, who was speaking to the press today here in the economic capital Douala. There is no reason, there is no explanation to the detention of Professor Maurice KAMTO and other leaders of the CRM political party at this juncture. Take a listen to Jean-Jacques Ekindi.
Here is to know either KAMTO and his militants and his colleagues have broken the law, yes or no. If it is yes, they have to go to court and convicted of the commitment against the law and support the penalties stated by the penal code. But if they are found not guilty, which means innocent, they have to be freed. And I don't see any reason at this point to keep these people in custody. I don't see any reason, because they are in investigation. And these people are leaders, they are known leaders. It means that at any time you can convene them, and now leaders, they must oblige themselves to attend at any calling, either of police, gendarmerie, or administrative services, or the judiciary. We ask that KAMTO be freed if there is not evidence of what is must follow, because maybe after the hearing his guilt will be found. At that time they'll put it on the right position if he's guilty. If he's not guilty, let him free.
Honorable Jean-Jacques Ekindi, National President of the Progressive Movement Political Party, speaking to the press here in the economic capital, Douala, and according to him, Honorable, the members of the CRM political party, from the leaders right down to the militants who were arrested during the protest move and after the protest move at the residence of Albert Zongan, including, of course, the journalists who are in detention, should be set free, and until investigations prove them guilty of the crimes they are alleged or accused to have committed, before their detention will be justifiable. And the Abonnez non-governmental organization has highlighted the plethora of irregularities and violence that are said to have marked the October 2018 presidential elections in the Republic of Cameroon. The non-governmental organization deployed observers across the country in over 60,000 polling stations, and of course the results brought in by these observers, according to Abonnez, indicate that Professor Maurice KAMTO won the elections in over 60,000 polling stations, and of course that is just part of the results, because the non-governmental organization was not in all the polling stations across the country, and the non-governmental organization has highlighted several irregularities, notably fraud and the buying of votes that went on or took place in several parts of the country, notably in some polling stations where there was a problem of power failure, and of course which has a negative impact on the credibility of the October 7, 2018 presidential election won by President Paul Biya. We'll be coming back to this in greater details with our guests, and we'll also be talking about the prevention of violence before, during, and after elections, like the one being observed in Cameroon today, with the Cameroon Renaissance Movement taking to the streets and calling for a recount of results of the October 7, 2018 presidential election, as Maurice KAMTO continues claiming his victory was stolen. Coming up, we talk about urban disorder with Immaculée Fogwe.
Some vendors at the Bolowa Central Market, found in the South region, have occupied the streets and roads, causing inconvenience to pedestrians and hampering the movement of vehicles. In trying to combat the clandestine form of business, the forces of law and order at the Gendarmerie Legion found the South region went to the scene and evicted the vendors. A road vendor affirmed that it is a good initiative, but questions where authorities are expecting them to go, given that sheds are limited in the market. The stores found in the market are limited. If stores were available, then we would have been selling our products in it. If stores are not built, then we have no choice than to come back next time. Shop owners in the market explained that the situation has caused a decrease in sales for them, as most customers tend not to visit their shops anymore. They are doing a good job. This initiative will help boost sales and equally ease the circulation of vehicles and persons. Before, people were unable to circulate on the road freely. We hope that the forces of law and order will constantly come to the scene to ensure that the move taken is fully respected. This other Ebolowa city dweller is preoccupied with the impact of this illegal occupation of the road. The regional hospital, found few meters away from the market, are sometimes affected by the traffic caused by the roadside vendors, which in most cases hampers the smooth circulation of their ambulance buses. These people are calling on council authorities to see on how more stores could be built in order to advance the fight against urban disorder.
Immaculate Fogwe reporting the urban disorder in Ebolowa. It is a major problem affecting many big towns in the Republic of Cameroon. It has practically become difficult, not just too difficult for public authorities to crack in major towns of the country, including the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, as well as the economic capital, Douala. Onto something else now. The 5,000 pupils in some primary schools in Mokolo in the far north region of the Republic of Cameroon have been given birth certificates. These children had been going to school without this very important document, and there are still many in the far north and Adamawa, as well as other parts of the country, who are not in possession of their birth certificates for several reasons. Usman Jikan Gabriel reports.
They can now sing for joy and celebrate after receiving one of the most vital documents they need in their lives to continue going higher with their education. The birth certificate, though coming several years after they came to this planet called Earth. The document, which is vital for them to register for their exams, will enable the 5,000 beneficiaries to sit in for their upcoming first school living certificate and common entrance examination. The pupils were so elated having their birth certificates.
Merci, merci.
I am very happy for what I have received. I can now effectively continue with my education. My friends were without a birth certificate, but now they can also smile. I am now glad to be having a birth certificate. The initiative of giving the people's birth certificates came as part of the social responsibility of the Mokolo Council, who went to help some parents who were unable to pay to acquire for their children's birth certificate. According to Hadja Kabgama of the Social Affairs Department in Mokolo, most of those who were aided didn't have the means depositing their documents for them to acquire the birth certificate. Most of them, she says, are young girls and boys, and they used certain criteria in selecting those who were given the birth certificates. Notwithstanding the gesture of the Mokolo Council, 35,000 pupils still remain without birth certificates in their hands.
And that's it for the first part of this newscast. Stay with us for Talking Point. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in Talking Point. In this edition, we are receiving a civil society actor. Her name is Sylvie Ndogmo. She is the president of the Cameroon branch of the Women International League for Peace and Freedom and coordinator of the Cameroon Women for Peaceful Elections. And that platform brings together 42 civil society organizations. And among the civil society organizations on that platform is Abonnez, which published its report as far as the 2018 presidential election in Cameroon is concerned. Madam, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me.
The platform, Abonnez, and the other 41 members of the platform of women, Cameroon Women for Peaceful Elections, observed the October 7, 2018 presidential election, and there have been a series of irregularities and violence that are said to have marked that election.
Maybe I want to say that we observed the process, not only the presidential election, it was the whole process, because there were activities before the election, during and after. And of course, there are the platform aimed at trying to see whether the elections in Cameroon, the process is peaceful or not. And from our own perspective from the start, we can say that the election, the environment at the start was not conducive at all, from all angles. If we take into account, for example, the security situation, it was a horrible situation, because there were two parts of the countries that were almost unable to take part in the vote. We had so many cases of what we call electoral rape, because everything is it's not about the election day, even before. The fact that the electoral code, which is the main policy document, was not consensual, is a real problem, because all the stakeholders did not agree. Therefore, we can say that the election started on a wrong basis. And also,
and talking about the security challenges, you're talking about two regions of the country, referring to the northwest and
the southwest, of course.
Regions. The government said elections took place in those regions.
I cannot say so. I cannot say, because we have some members there, and we were able to observe election in all the regions except the southwest, for example, because of security reasons. Our members, our partners, they were not even in the town. We know that many of them, people from this region, are in the bushes. Some are in Nigeria. They have become IDPs in their own countries. How do you expect them to vote when they are not at their places? And we all know what they said. Many of them are now out of the northwest, out of the southwest, and a lot of travel ban because of the security. Why did the Prime Minister not vote in his village? Because of this security situation. And how did you expect? We observed, we had the cases of 2 women who were killed in the northwest because they went out to vote. So I can't, the government is saying so, but to be very honest, we all know. The
government is saying so on grounds that polling centers were created in some urban centers where some persons
yes,
to vote.
I do agree, but the problem is that I hope the government is going to communicate more on this possibility. But before the presidential election, there was no communication. I only heard at the Constitutional Council talking about this transfer. But why didn't they communicate very well before the election? It could have enabled those from the northwest and southwest out of the regions to be able to vote. But many could not do so because they didn't know that there was a provision enabling them to be able to vote somewhere else. Even the Prime Minister, I don't want even to go very far. Let's take the case of the Prime Minister not being able to go and vote in his village. How do you expect the normal citizen from that area to go out when he knows that his security is at risk? So we think that even though the government is saying that election took place, we say from what we observe, from the report, from what we heard at the Constitutional Council, no, we cannot really say that they went on smoothly in those regions.
Well, apart from security challenges, what are some of the factors that you've brought out in your reports which make the environment unconducive? You were talking about the environment.
Yes, because from the beginning, as I mentioned, the electoral code, when we don't agree on something, it means that we are starting on wrong basis. That's number one. Number two, we are able to observe a strong power, a strong, how can I say it, hand of the administration on the electoral process. So we are asking ourselves, what is the role of ELECAM? We feel that ELECAM was a kind of set aside at some point by the authority, by the local authorities. So we feel that the environment was not conducive. And we noticed, we observed during the electoral campaign that there were a lot of conflict-driven factors. For example, giving or awarding the funds at a very late period was not okay, because even when you have money 2 weeks before, how can you plan? It's not possible. So that was one conflict-driven factor that we were able to observe. The other one was this travel ban. Yes, people were unable to move from one area to the other, especially in the northwest and southwest. That was also very bad. And political parties had problems because some of them were prevented from organizing their rallies in some regions. I want to specifically talk about women. I was able to, even in the commissions that we had, all these commissions, there were not many women. Why? So there was a kind of discrimination against women in the electoral process. But
now the election proper, the conduct of the election proper.
For on the election, we had like 207 cases from the phone, the calls that we received at the call center. And there were physical violence, psychological violence, and sexual violence. The first call we received was reporting the case of a member of the Univers political party. There were 2 of them were beaten to death in the far north. We had cases of some women in the southwest that were stripped naked because they went. So there were a lot of violence. And we were very sorry as women to know the case of these women, the cases were reported to us. They were unable to speak, to read. And because they were unable to read, because they didn't go to school, they were bullied instead of having support. And this made them to just go away. In the East, we had a case of a woman who was locked up by her husband because he didn't want her to go because they didn't agree on who to vote. And
these are some of the factors that provoked what we are experiencing in Cameroon today, with the CRM political party taking to the streets, being arrested and detained and so on. What's your take on all what has been happening in the past few days to militants and leaders of the CRM political party?
For those who know our organization very well, we have been very clear from the start. Our organization fights for peace and social justice. Until you address the root causes of conflict, we are going to live what we are living today. Because when people feel frustrated, we all saw what happened at the Constitutional Council. How can we have minutes which are not signed? There is a problem there. If these issues that M1 Avenue has spoken about, all these organizations, the political parties, if all these issues are not addressed, we are going to continue to be in this type of situation. And I want to say very clearly that the military responses are not the best. We cannot build sustainable peace with military responses. The best thing and the best recommendation, the main one that we are making, whether M1 Avenue or our organization, is to enable, to ensure that we have a peaceful environment. Can we talk, reconcile? Can we be reconciled as Cameroonians? Can we dialogue together? And can we together look into this electoral code so that we start on the same ground, on equal ground? If not, what is happening today is going to happen with other political parties.
And the municipal, legislative, and regional elections that are coming up this year.
I'm very worried because we had all these cases with only one election, and we are having many of them. So I'm very worried, and I'm pleading on the government to really take all these issues into account, to really address first the security challenges in the country, and also ensure that we start from the same ground, making that all the political parties, they should ensure that they agree on the content, the provisions of this code, and of course, address the issues of the youth, which are for me a kind of excluded. At 18, they can be sent to jail, but they cannot vote. That's a problem. They need to ensure inclusiveness for the next elections.
All right, we're going to certainly receive you in our subsequent news editions to talk in greater details on how to prevent violence before, during, and after elections in Cameroon.
It will be my pleasure to do that.
Sylvain Dogmo, you are the President of the Cameroon branch of the Women International League for Peace and Freedom, and the coordinator of the Cameroon Women for Peaceful Elections. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for this edition of the news. Bye.